All-Around Champion Diversity in Unscripted Television by Blue Ant Media. I want to welcome our panelists, Jordan Fabian Khan, Challenge Producer, Kenny Mack, Casting and Care Coordinator, Keianna Scarlett, Second AD, and our moderator, Kelsey Espensen, Senior Director of Unscripted Entertainment at Blue Ant Media.
All right, amazing. So as mentioned, I'm Kelsey Espensen, and I'm from Blue Ant Media, and I'm the Director of Unscripted Entertainment. And I actually had the privilege of working on All Around Champion in its very early stages in development. It's an NRK format from Norway. And All Around Champion, if you haven't seen it, it is an incredible series that has young, incredible athletes who are the top of their sports, and they're competing against one another in each other's sports. And so over the course of every series, we ultimately have one athlete who is the top athlete, who is the all-round champion and is the winner. And so it was great that I got to work in development for this, but all these folks on stage have been the ones that have brought this to life and worked in the production side of things. So I'm going to have each of you guys introduce yourselves and also kind of explain to me why it is that you wanted to work in film and television in general. So we'll start at the very end there.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Kenny Mack. I am the TV freelancer for the past 7 years, specializing usually in casting and cast care. And when I went to the industry, I originally started high school where they had like a TV film course, and I was like, ooh, let's try it out. So I was like, oh, okay. I was into like just creating videos and music videos with my high school people. You won't see it because it's very embarrassing back then. But yeah, and then I applied to Mohawk for TV broadcasting, and that's where I found my love for especially reality TV because I interned in Big Brother Canada, and I was like, ooh, drama and all that. I'm into it. Sold. Yeah.
My name's Keianna Scarlett. I've been freelancing in multimedia and mostly reality television for the past 8 years. I was that typical kid in high school that didn't really know what they wanted to do, but wanted a little bit of a taste of everything. And I remember one day I was watching TV and the credits came up, and I just was so interested that there were so many different roles that you could get into and so many titles that I didn't know what they did, but I knew they were so crucial and on every single show. So I did more research, and I realized that I wanted to get into the entertainment industry, but mostly in television. So then I got an internship at Big Brother, and I also started assistant directing with Blue Ant Media and joined their team and did a couple of shows with them and did All Around Champion.
My name is Rubani. I have worked on and off in the industry for about 10 years, or close to 10 years, doing roles such as talent wrangling, talent coordinating, and casting researcher, and then with All Around Champion, casting director. And I found my way in this industry much like Kenny and Keianna in high school, and it sounds so cheesy, but it was in Great Town Film class, and we were given a project to write down just a short story or something and go film it in the hallways, like by the lockers, and make it come to life. But I think the possibility of writing and creating anything that you wanted and making it come to life on screen fascinated me. And I think prior to that, I had an interest in photography, and I think just taking pictures and capturing moments, and I think both of those went hand in hand really well. And I just chased that dream to university and went to Ryerson for RTA, back when it was known as RTA, and also known as Ryerson. But yeah, it was a hard battle to convince my parents that I wanted to go into media because that's not what they wanted for me, but I chose that path, and I'm very happy with what I've done and met some amazing people that way. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Fabian Khan. I actually come from the sports world. I'm a sports producer, but I worked on All Around Champion Season 5 as a challenge producer and just putting my sports knowledge to the test. I actually got my start in the industry working for TSN as a story editor and a producer on some control shows for like the MLS, the NBA, and then some NHL shows. I don't watch hockey, but I've produced hockey. I don't know, I always feel like I need to say that. I actually fell in love with TV and film back in high school as well. I also did internships at Rogers TV, which existed in Mississauga at the time. But I also, when I was an athlete and like I was playing sports regularly, I would cut highlight tapes for my teammates and then just sell it off to them for like lunch money and stuff like that. So I always had a natural like idea of how to edit and tell stories through, I don't know, video, and it kind of culminated in me going to Ryerson, or TMU now. And yeah, going into sport media, getting an internship through there, and then suddenly taking a turn and ending up as a story editor on Big Brother Canada, and a story producer there, and then working on other reality shows as an in-story. So I really, sports and sports journalism was my way into the industry, and I found a really love for storytelling after that, so that's why I'm here.
Amazing. I think that we all are going to do a deep dive on YouTube to find some of these high school videos. Kenny, I'm looking at you.
No, it's private now.
So for all-around champion, so in your guys' opinion, respectfully, how do you think that we approached representation in front and behind the camera?
I think for us on casting side especially, we're the ones that are the first to approach the cast members through interviews and just talking to them. So that's like our first communications with them, just so they can tell their story, their preference, how they want to be like called as. So it's important to know like their life story, and just so we can like use that information and just giving it to a network or story, for example, and that will get them to like build a bond with us, just so we can get like acquainted with them, and then with that information as well, we can pass that to on-set camera as well, just so they know like how to accommodate them while they're on set as well. Keianna being one of them, like the AD, she would know more so that she can tell different departments about how the cast members would want to be on the show, how they operate throughout their day.
Yeah, and just to expand a little bit on that, it could be many different things, like something like someone who's a diabetic. Just that knowledge of knowing, and different department knowing that we have a little more patience with this person, that some mornings that they need to take a little more time to get their blood sugar up. Sometimes they need to stop down in the middle of the day just to have an apple juice, and we need to be patient because there's no timeline for when that blood sugar is going to go back up. You just got to be patient. You got to adapt to your crew. You got to know what their daily stuff is like, because you're with them for a moment, but their life doesn't change. It keeps going, and we got to adapt to that as a team and as a crew behind the scenes so that they feel comfortable when they are on camera to be their self, and their unique story will shine through that way.
Amazing. I feel like you guys really get to know the athletes like through and through. And what's really interesting about All Around Champion is, unlike a lot of other unscripted competitions, it's actually non-elimination. So all of the athletes are with us throughout the entire series. So you really get to know them and kind of get to know their inner workings and you know, their preferences. And so being a non-elimination competition, keeping this and diversity in mind, how do you incorporate each contestant's story and sport throughout the entire series?
Yeah, I can answer this one. Obviously, it's not a playoff where they go home at the end of the day and they feel defeated. If they lose, if they're last place, they still have to stay for the following 10 weeks. Well, for season 5 of the season that I worked on, it was a 10-week shoot. So if you failed in the first week, I couldn't, as a challenge producer, let them go into week 2 thinking they're a failure, because every week is a new week. So that played its part in storytelling without me having to interfere with story, but just giving them a little push to say, hey, it's not over yet. You still have a lot to do on the show. Your story still needs to be told. It is very early. And I found that in the case with all shows, but All Around Champion Season 5, which was the first and only para-athlete season that we had. That was one where I noticed as a challenge producer there were so many difficulties that we had to overcome just with the different ability levels. So having to overcome those things and then go into week 2 for a new challenge that they may succeed or may fail, and just really push them. I think I used to take on a big sibling kind of position when I would talk to the athletes. I've always been kind of like a motivating figure, even to like my little cousins and my family. So I would go on set and just give them a little like dap every time they looked a little down or before they were about to go do an interview, just to tell them that your story still needs to be told. We still need the best version of you. And yeah, just go out there and succeed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just answering the part of the question in relation to diversity, I think, so the season I worked on, I actually did work on season 3 very briefly, but as a sports star coordinator, I forget what the title was, but anyways, more hands-on season 6 as casting director. And we had such a diversity of sports alone. So in that sense, you know, from the beginning stages of when we started talking about the show and started having conversations about the kind of sports we wanted to include, tech ball. Never heard of this sport before. Look it up. It's very cool. And then cricket, which obviously I've heard of before and grew up with, you know, playing in like parking lots at the like building, like right in front of my house. So especially I think for cricket, for me, because it's such a culturally, there's a cultural tie to it. I think, you know, including that in the conversation was really important. And I remember, when I was sharing with my friends and family that I was working on the show, and I couldn't share a lot of details, but I did mention that we were casting for a cricket sports star, and we had found a young cricket athlete who was really good at what he does, and you know, seeing the sort of twinkle in the eyes of my uncle saying that, oh, that's so cool. And, you know, he chirped me a little bit, just, you know, being an uncle, did his own thing. But then him and my aunt talking about how they wanted to get my cousin into watching the show. And I think one of the important things that diversity does, I think with our show, but just in general, is, and I think especially with a younger audience, is it starts those conversations early, and I think it shows you that anything is possible. And if you can see, I know it sounds cheesy to say, but if you can see a version of you or you represented on TV, whether it is doing the thing that you grew up with or just simply seeing yourself on there, that's important. And in getting that excitement up, it's important. So I bring up that story because that's why that matters, to see that on TV, to build up that, you know, excitement to say, okay, if you can do it, I can do it too. Yeah.
Amazing. First of all, tech ball. Never heard of it in my life up until All Around Champions. So yes, please check it out. And of course, seeing sports that you grew up with and different, you know, things that you can relate to really does empower you as a viewer, and also being on set. So how do you guys foster inclusion and empowerment while offering a safe space on set? And how is language and boundaries important when working with these young athletes? These are young athletes who are, you know, at their prime, but they're still young athletes.
Yeah, I can start. So one of the big things is because they're young athletes, we didn't call them kids or children. We made it very specific to call them athletes. They're here because they're specialized in their sport, and they should be treated like that professional. If they were older, they would be treated like professional. So this was the first, or one of many steps of them feeling that respect from other people. And we wanted to carry that on throughout the whole season. It's also a range of ages. So there's young kids, young athletes. See, you always check yourself and we check each other. But there was young athletes there that were preteens, and there was other athletes that were young, going into being young adults. And the way you treat them really reflects or really resonates with them, and they will feel that respect and feel as equals on set. Something as small as going to the bathroom. We always have like a system of people bring everyone everywhere. We have wranglers that bring people to and from, but there's some space where you can give them space where you don't have to stand right outside the door if they're a certain age. You don't hover, you don't have to time them, you don't have to worry. They got it. They know, and they see that respect when they know that there's a slight difference in the way we treat them, because we accommodate depending on their age, depending on their preference, depending on their comfort level. Some people could be older and be like, hey, I want someone to go with me to go grab a water bottle. It's just the small things to just jump in and accommodate them.
Yeah, exactly. And then especially for season 5, what we had different there was that it was a season that featured para-athletes. And with that, on top of what Keianna mentioned, we would also use a different language. And for example, their classifications in para-sports, there's just so many different categories of like what is in their para-sports. So we just had to find out what their disability is, and then using the correct language of like able-bodied sports, para-athletes, para-sports, and then also just expand on that just so they can be accommodated. And then, for example, like we just have to make sure every on-set locations we have, just make sure it's like accessible for everyone, just so they can all feel included, along as whether they're staying for the show. Like we had a home in Hamilton, and during that time, it wasn't like up to par, so we would just like add extra accommodations, like building a ramp for them, just so they everything can work out well for their stay here.
Yeah, I can go further on season 5 there. Again, the only parasport season that we had. As a challenge producer, we had 9 different athletes, so that meant 9 different sports, and 9 parasports that I was unfamiliar with. And from a personal level, I think I was naive when I went into this season, thinking just because, say, I understood Canadian football rules, that I could understand what para-rowing might be like, or what para-track might be like. So it was real trial and error, and honestly a baptism by fire to go into this position. So I made it a point that if I'm going to make these athletes feel comfortable, I have to hire the right off-screen coaches that behind the scenes can help them succeed and help them go week to week without feeling like they're alone in this. So an example of that is in week 5, we did para ice hockey, also called sledge hockey. And so I had to go out and find a sledge hockey coach, which actually wasn't that hard because this is Canada. So I bring him in, and he was there on the side as they're shooting, and he leaves. And by the time he comes back, there's an athlete coming off the ice, and they're talking about a struggle that they're having with one of their sleds. And Brian, his name was, he already had the solution because he spoke the language, and he saw the vision. He knew exactly what was going on, which I honestly would have taken me about half an hour to fix. Because one, I would have had to identify the issue, had to discuss it with the para-athlete, had to then go find what the fix was, and then honestly just figure it out how to fix it myself. But to have someone there that can represent for them, speaks the language, understands the struggles, the trials, and all those tribulations, like they can do in half the time what would take me a full day. Or maybe they could do it in 5 minutes like Brian did. So it was, the idea of just surrounding them with people that speak the language, I think, was really important, especially a para season like that, yeah.
I was just going to say, like, just adding to that, it just makes things a little bit easier. I mean, 30 minutes is not that long, but if you think about 30 minutes in the eyes of someone who can have it done, or just it can be made easier and done in 2 minutes because someone simply speaks the language, as you said, whether that's the language of sport or whether that's quite literally a different language, it matters. It makes things a lot easier. And I mean, we should be trying to make things easier for everybody just so that we can have smooth, clear communication, a smooth show, just better relationships, better everything. And also just wanted to add something to what Kenny said. I think just in terms of, how there's so many different aspects and things to think about when we think about, let's say, especially season 5, or just in general when we're casting for a show like this. I think we also need to remind ourselves, because this is something I had to remind myself of, that diversity and inclusion doesn't just start and stop with race, age, there's identity, there's cultures, there's so many other things and so many nuanced elements related to all of that. So it's important to not only think about those things, but also have those conversations and make sure that we are including that in our process.
Amazing, very well said, all of you. What was your favorite part about working on All Around Champion? You guys all worked, some of you worked on the similar seasons, some worked on different. I need the details. Give me the nitty gritty. What was your favorite part?
I think for me, I've been working on the show since season 3 up until season 6. So I think my favorite part is like, it's such a tight-knit family. Like, I love the travel days, especially when we get to go into like farther sports locations, so staying in hotels, and just building, like, we're always like on a road trip, so like we don't really get to see people outside of our circle, so just building that bond and just having like a nice little dinner after like an on-set day, that's pretty fun to me, and just so we can just build a bond and be personal about each other.
I was gonna say the same thing. I was gonna say the little things add up. Like, you really become a family when you're on set with these people. A big thing that we used to do, and sometimes we get in trouble for it, was at lunch we'd play the sport, and we'd get so into it, and sometimes we'd maybe scrape a knee.
Sometimes you lose the equipment.
Be stumbling a little bit the next day on set. But it was all in good fun. Like, who knew I was good at pickleball? No one. Who knew what tech ball, it just blew my mind too. She brought it up, but it's just like soccer and like a ping pong table together, and like I can't even start to talk about it, but like little things like that would get you everyone together. I know the athletes had their own game that they would play together because they're so good at their own sport, but together they had this game that they would play together. Little things on the bus between shoots, they'd make up like hand games, and they'd be like, hey, Keianna, what's your favorite Taylor Swift song? And I'm like, good question. Like, little things like that just makes the bond and making like work not feel like work. Makes it more fun.
What is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Our song? It's a good one. Oldie but goodie. Oldie but goodie. I like the old stuff.
For me, I think the coolest thing was, I think this was maybe my first, no, sorry. I think seeing the process from beginning to end. I wasn't on set every single day. I didn't work directly on set for season 6, but I visited set one day. And in many ways, I did feel like I saw this current season go from initiation to completion, and I think that was the coolest thing to, have such an important hand to play when we were casting. Kenny and I worked together very closely for that, and then see this cast come together, be in those discussions, talk about why stories were important, and then see it go all the way through to the end, and then getting phone calls from our cast wranglers on the last day saying, hey, the kids want to talk to you and say thank you and just say I had a great time on the show. I think it just had more meaning. Every experience that I've had working in this industry has had meaning, but this just had a different level of it. And I think besides that too, just meeting and working with some really cool people never hurts. So.
Yeah, for me, as Keianna mentioned, I think that time in between, when the cameras weren't rolling, was so important. And one of my jobs as a challenge producer was to gather all the equipment and what we needed to play the sport. So one of my favorite memories was we had a wheelchair basketball episode, and for lunchtime everybody ate within 3 minutes just so they could go shoot hoops with balls that I provided. And I remember counting, every time I shot a basket I'd turn around and be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just to make sure we had all of them. And I think we lost 3, which I still think about today. But aside from actually playing the sport, just the idea that we're making a show that is so diverse and so inclusive, from everything from ethnicity to the ability levels that we had, and knowing that when I was a kid and growing up, I didn't really see that on television. It was very, it was just very solo. There wasn't much diversity in TV. I grew up in the UK, and even here when I moved, it wasn't the same thing. So to be a part of it behind the scenes and see the impact that we're having, and to have those discussions with the athletes behind the scenes about, the people that are going to watch them, that was really touching to me. Yeah. So just having an impact. Yeah.
Amazing. And if you come across 3 basketballs, you know where to deliver them back. Final question before we wrap this up. What tips would you give a BIPOC creative looking to get into the unscripted television world?
I can start with that. I was just thinking about this, actually, funny enough, on my ride here. Tell your story. Take up space. And, I think in the conversation that we're having right now, but just in general, I think it's scary to think about that. And I think, no matter what you have come up with, it can feel really daunting to realize that you have something that can make an impact. And it shouldn't even be to make an impact that you should be saying something or taking up that space. Do it anyways, because it's important. And one thing I realized as like pretty recently, ooh, that just broke, is that there's no one way to show up as who you are, or like where it is that you come from, or whatever you identify as. I've been, I wouldn't say struggling with that lately, but that's just part of my identity that I've like been coming to terms with. Just being an immigrant in Canada, coming from, born in India, lived in Dubai, came here like, oh my God, 20 years ago now. And I've just been having this conversation with myself about, feeling like I don't look a certain way or act a certain way or enough to what I think someone like me should look like or act like or be like. And it's just important to know that it shouldn't look just one way. There's so many different ways to show up as who you are. Yeah.
Amazing.
I agree. I was going to say something along the lines of that as well, but as well, it's really important to be yourself and not feel like you have to be something else for other people. There's the 10 keys to success that are free. I'm not going to list them all, but the little things are being on time, being present, listening back to answer properly, not just to get a response. Being good to yourself is being good to other people. Not being good for yourself is not being good for other people. So just be yourself, be good for yourself. Also, I think a lot of people think that they have to be, present themselves a certain way to certain people to get up and above to, so, for example, to a certain, starting to lose what I was trying to say, to a superior, you may think that you have to impress them. That's not true. You can just be with your peers. A lot of people think you have to network up. It's really important to network across with people who are at the same level as you. How are they feeling? What do they do when they don't know what to do next? Get new tools and learn how to be yourself in multiple ways to shine bright, I'd say.
And that's pretty much my thought too, along with all the important notes. I think for me too, especially going to the casting department side, I find that on a lot of shows, that department tends to be very diverse in terms of BIPOC and all, just so we can see all the different cast members that we also cast too, just so they each can have that comfortability and that relatability at times. So sometimes they do need that, just so they can feel pretty all right on set.
Yeah, and I think for me, when it comes to just how I moved through the industry, I always think about how I just wanted to be myself, especially when working in reality and unscripted television. Only because the stories that I'm telling, whether it was as a challenge producer or as a story editor, if I'm not myself and I'm not being myself, then the stories I'm telling don't feel real because I'm not being real myself. Reelworld.
Wow.
That's a great way to end.
That was a really perfect way. Well, what am I even doing here?
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you guys so much for being part of this panel and for, bringing the show to life. Without you guys, there would be no show. So thank you very much, and thank you so much for all your insightful answers. And yeah, amazing. Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you guys for having us.